Welcome to another of our chats with people in the community that are doing things to care, share and protect, and that includes giving sage advice. And today the topic on Milton Keynes beating coronavirus is the importance of involving the grassroots, the community, to make real progress in beating something like coronavirus. So to help me is a man called Mike Casham, who had a lot of experience as a project manager over in Africa, and he's going to tell us about how engaging with the community made a huge difference to turning around that previous pandemic. So Mike, welcome back to Milton Keynes beating coronavirus and this discussion today. How are you?
Yeah, very good. And you?
I'm intrigued to find out your views, because we had within the community, we've seen some real grassroots support happening and it's made quite a difference. You've been working over in Africa on some of the other major pandemics before coronavirus hit. What's been your experience out there? I mean, first of all, tell us a little bit about your work over there.
Okay, so I worked with VSO, Voluntary Service Overseas. I worked for a number of years with World Vision in Kenya, Sudan, Ethiopia, Sierra Leone during the Ebola crisis, one or two other countries, Syria, education, Nepal, earthquake. But there's a particular lesson that is illustrated by a couple of examples, one from Sierra Leone and one from Kenya. So in Sierra Leone, during the Ebola epidemic, we had a project which was initially called Safe Burials, and it was funded by the UK, UK aid, with a little bit of funding from Ireland and the USA as well. When I say a little bit of funding, we're talking millions here, but there's 25 million from Department for International Development. Now, this started off as the Safe Burials project, because the problem with Ebola was members of the community, the family and so on, would wash the body. That was the traditional practice, and all infect themselves with Ebola. And what needed to happen from a sanitation and public health point of view was for people with totally enveloped in effective PPE to come in, remove the body, put it in a body bag, take away all the possessions and clothes, burn them, douse the area with chlorine. And there was a lot of resistance to this. And the body would be safely buried. There was a lot of resistance. Now, what that moved towards, and I'll explain the help that got us there, was the Safe and Dignified Burials project. So in the Safe and Dignified Burials project, the body would be buried, for example, with appropriate hygiene protection, with appropriate PPE. 12 meters away would be the minister or the imam and members of the family to say the prayers to honor the person that was being buried. And the way that message was communicated and the importance of that was through a minister, Christian minister and an imam together in a mosque or together in a church, saying, look, the community, look, this is what we've got to do. And it is okay. It's all right to do this. That approach which World Vision pioneered in Sierra Leone is called the Channels of Hope approach. And I've recently, working with World Vision, put together another £1 million bid, which we just got accepted last week for another African country, again, using Channels of Hope. And the other little example, it's an example here of absolutely involving the community. Understanding what will work for the community. The other little example, in Kenya some years back, I was running a startup workshop for a project which was about maternal and child health, nutrition, family planning. And during the workshop, somebody raised the question of how do we get better male involvement in this? Now, as the facilitator of the workshop at this point, sometimes I try and answer the question, but in the southern regions of Kenya, I am not the person best equipped to say, how are we going to get better male involvement? And what I do with those sort of things is, we had 20 people in the workshop, mostly Kenyans, is I say, okay, who's best to answer that? Give us a 2-minute presentation on it. And it was great to go back to that project 2 years later to monitor it, to see the community health workers that were there, and to see that 25% of them were male. And somebody was saying, oh, that's unusual to have this many male community health workers. And to be able to say, yeah, well, we thought about that right at the start in the first week of the project, and we asked Kenyans to come up with the best answer for that.
So moving this to a more local focus, when you look at Milton Keynes, are there any opportunities, do you think, for that type of approach to benefit our community?
The key thing always is what's going on locally, and there are a number of groups around Milton Keynes, together with an overall umbrella group that's bringing them all together. The key thing is to understand what are the factors in your local community, be they religious, other community groups, and I think the different groups that you'll see in different areas in Milton Keynes, which is to say, are kind of brought together with MK Coronavirus Community Support, bringing many of them together. But they have their roots in the local community. So in Bletchley, for example, it's MK3 group that Mary Ann runs, is involving loads and loads of volunteers from the community and making use of the community resources and existing community links. Many of the parish councils in Milton Keynes have been enthusiastic supporters and participants in this activity. So yeah, use all the local links that you've got.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the parish councils, and I think there's also been a lot of religious groups. Been obvious that the Muslim Brothers have played a big role. We've got some of the Muslim community in Wolverton who've been not just doing charity during this particular pandemic, but for years beforehand. SIA Global, which I think is possibly a Hindu or Sikh charity, and these are tremendous forces. So is there a club in Milton Keynes, a kind of overarching coordination of the religious aspect? Because I think that sort of spiritual side of things plays an important role in their traditions of benevolence.
That is a good question. I'm a member of St Mary's Church Bletchley, which is closely related to the MK3 group that I mentioned. There is a Facebook group called One Church MK, but that is a collection of Christian churches. So I don't know if there's an overall, across all religions group. Living in Ghana for a year, I was really struck by how very closely the Christians and Muslims worked together. And the same was true of Sierra Leone during the Ebola pandemic. And I hope that we can do the same here.
Yeah. So that's great. Any other comments you want to make before we wrap up in terms of initiatives that fit in with this grassroots and community action?
Yeah, no, it's just, I would totally encourage the grassroots action at whatever level, street, grid square, city, and I have encouraged the government to provide better support for that, but not with much response so far.
Okay, well, we'll thank you very much for giving us that insight into what lessons were learned, and if you're watching this and you've got your own information, experiences that will help the Milton Keynes community, care, share and protect, contact us. We can do an interview like the one we did for Mike. Also check out the scheme that we have, which will allow you to, if you're a commercial company, to have us donate 20% towards your favourite charity. So from myself and Mike, bye for now.